We had a bit of fun on X the other day mocking the rise of the modern junk PhD, and it appears that I've managed to upset quite a few hardened academics. Useless PhDs, a thread. The recent Raygun fiasco at the Olympics raised questions regarding the modern day PhD candidate. But do you know just how widespread this pandemic of grifters is? Dr. Judith Glover, sexpert. Dr. Judith Glover believes she has the world's only PhD in dildo design and runs the first ever university course in sex toy manufacturing. Would you urge your kids to get into student debt and waste 4 years of their life on this course? Now, her thesis is probably quite an interesting read. I find sexual behaviour intriguing, but a PhD? Isn't this more suited to an online blog? In her interviews and in her thesis, she goes on about marginalised peoples and their oppressed sex lives and how sex toys are taboo, and she's going to change all of that. The money is with the over 50s female market, and it's not being catered for because society doesn't want to think of women as sexual figures at that age. The fact is that adult toys are a huge industry, and if her dildo designs are truly the best and they can be produced and sold to make a profit, then a manufacturer would jump at the opportunity to take on her ideas. Does she actually think that a bunch of businessmen who just want to make money would have a look at her idea and say, right lads, listen up. These vibrators, they went down well with the focus group. We can make them fairly cheaply. There's a demand for them. The marketing team are confident that they can promote this product. What do you all think? Mr. Mackenzie, just one thing. Wouldn't this invention bring joy and happiness to lots of women? It's a great point, Mr. Campbell. I hadn't thought of that. Shut it down. Cancel the project. We can't have women happy. That's just not going to happen. These guys want to make money. Sex toys are massive. Some literally. But I suspect the amount of young feminists opting to study her course in sex toy manufacturing would far outweigh the paying jobs available in the industry. I don't think the feminists would want the job of sitting on the production line in the factory. Harry Potter PhDs. There are at least 22 examples globally of Harry Potter related PhDs. One example being Mary Pyle, awarded a PhD by Trinity College Dublin, whose thesis was titled, "What is it that is so important at an unconscious level in Harry Potter that people respond to it?" I also found plenty of other Harry Potter university courses around the world. In 2012, the University of Florida awarded a master's degree to Liza Clark for her investigation, Butterbeer, Cauldron Cakes and Fizzing Whizbees, food in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. Frisbee. You like to throw a frisbee? Turn that passion into an academic career. It worked for Dr. Gerald Griggs, the Dean of UCFB Manchester, with his study, You've Got to Love the Plastic, an ethnographic study of ultimate frisbee in the UK. Again, interesting, but I don't think it's worthy of being called a doctor. Karl Marx, the 19th century trust fund kid. Born into affluence, this lawyer's son identified as a working class coal miner. His privileged background allowed him the luxury of dossing around at uni for years before eventually pursuing a PhD in his personal interest of ancient Greek philosophy. Marx, of course, was also the architect of brain-dead slogans like "Let's seize the means of production," which went on to be repeated by generations of posh kids with their Che Guevara t-shirts. Raj S. got a little bit upset that I picked on his hero. Like him or not, Marx was an important political thinker and one of the most influential ones historically. Putting him together with these other grifters is unfair. Settle down, Raj, I'm just having a wee bit of fun. Microaggressions in online games. To achieve the prestigious award of Doctor, Taylor Hardwick addressed the issue of feeling unsafe and excluded at online games events during COVID lockdowns. Taylor suffers from mass hysteria and cannot leave her home without covering her face. Now, I'm short on time today, but Taylor will be getting her own video in the near future, as her grifting story is hilarious and has to be told. A PhD in Lady Gaga? Meet Dr. Catherine Nelligan, who wrote her junk doctorate on brand Lady Gaga. Kat's interests include mental health, gender, and LGBTQI+ stuff. She goes to great lengths to remind us of her status as a proud Aboriginal woman, despite being very white presenting. The Lady Gaga PhD is like the many Taylor Swift related university courses which I was reminded of by Francie Nancy here. One example of a Taylor Swift PhD from Melbourne is this girl, Kate Pattison, who was unlucky not to make my original list. Kate's research looks at the relationship between pop music fandom, creativity, and professional pathways. She is currently interviewing fans of Harry Styles, Taylor Swift, Delta Goodrem, and BTS for her research project. Now, Kate's research is so important that RMIT University have put her on an expert panel where she'll talk about things like Taylor Swift's cultural importance and how did Taylor Swift get so popular, throwing things on stage, and Swifties and Easter eggs. I mean, there's nothing wrong with liking Taylor Swift or hosting fan meetups, but this is why academia is not taken seriously anymore. Oh my god, I'm totally a highly valued academic and I'm not being used at all by the university machine. Doctor of Storytelling. Dr. Beddoes specialises in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and is in a polyamorous relationship with previously featured PhD grifter Dr. Kat Nelligan. This is for real. There's a lot of polyamory within the PhD community in Melbourne for some reason. Emma recently got a new job grifting at the same government department as E-Safety Commissioner Julie Inman-Grant. This is also true. She works for the Australian Communications Media Authority as a senior researcher, which is the same government department that the E-Safety Office reports into. Dr. Beddoes will get her own video in future as she too is a hysterical mess. Just going through this specific community of PhDs in Melbourne alone revealed some strange coincidences. It's surprising how many of them in Melbourne are all in some mass polycule. Almost always you'll find that they endlessly screech about LGBTQI+, they use pronouns, they refer to Melbourne as NARM, and they all voted yes on the Voice referendum and expressed deep sorrow and shame when the majority voted no. Is there some correlation between people whose opinions always align with the latest fashionable virtue signalling position and people who also enter into this PhD world? Are these people articulate but soft-minded and ego-driven and therefore can be easily controlled? It's almost like these academic awards are a pat on the head for being a loud and outspoken advocate of the official current narrative. And universities can easily con them into signing up for these junk PhDs, knowing that in return they have to teach lots of undergraduate classes as part of their PhD. It's cheap labour for the universities. Maybe someone can do a PhD on that. You all know this one. It's the fan favourite, Rachel Louise Gunn, also known as Raygun. And she got herself the title of doctor in a cushy university job with her thesis, Deterritorialising Gender in Sydney's breakdancing scene, in which she writes about her perpetual state of victimhood. Now that I've had a little bit more time to read Raygun's thesis, it's more obvious that she just waffled a load of pish to get this prestigious university award. She reminds us in the thesis, as she does in her interviews, of how she's an expert in other styles like ballet and jazz and tap and ballroom and salsa, and she notes that these are all female dominated. I'd grown up in a dance school where the boys were the unusual ones. Why then weren't there more female breakdancers? This observation led me to start to critically reflect on the gender disparity within the scene, my desires to join this overtly masculine space, and my assumptions about dance participation. Through all of this, my one question was, why are there so few female breakdancers? So she goes on a mission to change breakdancing because there should be fair representation. Yet she never once thought about challenging the gender disparity within jazz and ballet, ballroom and all the others in which she's an expert in. So if there's female dominance, then gender disparity doesn't matter. It's kind of typical of these feminist movements. I've never heard a female demanding that male adult movie stars get paid the same as the females. They want to take over anything where they perceive men doing well, but they're very selective in this. Offer them garbage disposal or working down the sewers and they'll pretend they didn't hear you. How many PhDs? Now, this was very interesting. I found it hard to believe at first, but according to the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, close to 2% of American adults have a PhD, and so that's estimated to be between 4 to 6 million people in the US alone with a PhD. The UK and Australia are also at that 2% mark. According to Swinburne University, a PhD candidate must produce significant and original research. I do not think that all of those 4 to 6 million PhDs in the US would have done exactly that, or the estimated several hundred thousand we've got here in Australia. I believe that many of them are junk doctorates, and I ponder what motivates people to collect these garbage certificates. Is it largely just the lure of being called a doctor that convinces many people to take on a PhD? Important academic study that requires funding, or more suited to a personal blog? How many of these doctors would have carried out their research if there was no ego-boosting title attached to it, no future financial incentive, if it was purely a work of passion? Now, I admit that some of these PhD papers had interesting sections, but I can't help but feel they're more suited to a blog than something that should be funded as an important academic study. For many of them, if these are just personal interests, then do you really need the PhD? Why not just do this as a hobby, write it as a blog, make a video, hold an interactive live stream? As usual, some of the responses were entertaining. Despicable Meme reminded me of Uncle Professor Bruce Pascoe, and I can't believe I forgot to include him. Bruce Pascoe, while he was in his 30s, discovered that he had some Aboriginal ancestry, and suddenly started to claim that that small percentage of Aboriginal blood in him is what he felt most strongly connected to. I wonder if the potential to make money out of that minuscule Aboriginal ancestry played a part in his sudden LARPing. And he then went on to make claims that Aboriginals were extensive farmers and that they lived in sophisticated houses, and then Melbourne University gave him some sort of honorary title, Enterprise Professor in Indigenous Agriculture. Brett N pointed out that the Queensland Premier Stephen Miles has a PhD as well, and so many politicians seem to have a Bachelor of Arts and a PhD. His thesis was about trade unions and something about rebuilding worker involvement. I haven't looked into his PhD like I have the others, but even the title suggests some Marxist cult-themed drivel. But as usual, I get the biggest kick out of some of the negative comments. Eva Bernat, who has PhD in her username, got very upset and asked me, "You, high school level education or below?" Very salty. I love this because it shows how they look down on anyone who doesn't have one of their university participation certificates. I've encountered many people who are high school dropouts who are extremely intelligent. And on the flip side, I've met people with many academic qualifications who haven't got the slightest bit of common sense. I don't know what Eva's PhD is in, I didn't really look that deeply into it. Maybe she's got one of the few valuable ones. But looking at her photos online with the heavy filters on them and standing in front of a pile of books in order to look intelligent, I'd guess that much of her life is quite fake. Now, to answer your question, Eva, I did go to university as an adult and I have a master's degree, but in no way do I equate that to me being any smarter than someone with a high school level of education. Elizabeth Adams asked, "Why do you think ancient Greek philosophy is useless?" You can tell this one's burnt her as well. It's impossible to have a discussion with these people, as this is how they react. They'll deliberately twist your words to what they want to have heard. Yeah, I think there can be interesting stuff in ancient Greek philosophy, but maybe most of it is not doctor-worthy, and that attaching doctorates to this sort of stuff is only serving the university business, or serving to manipulate self-obsessed people who've put too much value in titles or the letters they put after their name on an email signature. There was a guy the other day online claiming that he has unlocked the key to anti-gravity. Now, if his research is legit, then I think that's worthy of some fancy self-indulgent title. David says, "At least the people you list have to meet some academic standard. You missed a fairly controversial one. What about this one running around and calling themselves doctor?" And he's referring to Gina Reinhardt, who got an honorary doctorate from some Australian university. Look, I listed less than 10 of them on this Twitter thread. I could have gone on for weeks listing them. I didn't know Gina had one of these honorary degrees, but I think those are a load of toss as well. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Billy Connolly, but he's got some honorary degrees from universities in Glasgow, and I think that's all wank. Newt Ridley comments, anti-education thread more like. Look mate, reading Harry Potter is not education, it's what you do in your leisure time. Mouse says it stinks a bit of misogyny. So Mouse is upset that my list was mostly females. Look Mouse, if you type in Harry Potter PhD on Google, see what comes up. Type in Lady Gaga PhD, see what comes up. Type in Taylor Swift academics, see what comes up. It's mostly female. I can't change that. Go do a bloody fact check. This is just scratching the surface. We're living through a plague of these wasters, which wouldn't be an issue if it were not for them walking into organisations and demanding huge salaries based on their daft PhDs. And often it's these taxpayer funded organisations they go into, or universities who also get big grants from the taxpayer. And I suspect the average member of the public has never truly realised how much of their money gets wasted on these frauds. People, it really only ends when you start making noise about this. Make sure you are playing your part in ending the grift of the modern day PhD. Go ridicule a fake academic today.